and 1. Great.
Namaste. Welcome to One and All. I am V. Ramanathan from the Indian Institute of Technology, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. And on this momentous day of 16th December 2020, which happens to have this relationship of 16 square plus 12 square is equal to 20 square, we are indeed happy that we have this institute lecture delivered by Professor M.D. Srinivas. Just a couple of words about this day. The world calls it as the Pythagoras Day, whereas we would like to call it as Baudhayana Day, although the Puritans would still say that whether Baudhayana really invented it or was it there in the tradition before Baudhayana, that details we will not get into, but for all practical purposes, we know that this theorem was much before Pythagoras, as stated by even Voltaire, the 17th century French philosopher, whom I can quote here. I quote, "I am convinced that everything has come down to us from the banks of the Ganga, astronomy, astrology, etc. It is very important to note that some 2500 years ago, at least Pythagoras went from Samos to Ganga to learn geometry. But he would certainly not have undertaken such a strange journey had the reputation of the Brahmin science not been long established in Europe. If that was 17th century Voltaire, then we get to see Dr. Walter Thibault in the late 19th century, who was in fact the first to put on record in the Journal of Asiatic Society of Bengal about the Sulba Sutra. He says that the geometrical theorem of Sulba Sutra, which tradition ascribes to Pythagoras, was solved by Hindus at least 2 centuries earlier. So this sutra, which I am sure Professor Srinivas also will be alluding to in his lecture, it is a simple statement, Dirgha Chaturasra Akshniya Rajjuhu Parshvamani Tiryangmani Cha Yat Pritak Bhute Kurutaha Tat Ubhayam Karoti, which literally translates in English as a rope stretched along the length of the diagonal produces an area which the vertical and the horizontal sides make together. And this is what we refer to as the Pythagoras theorem, or the square of the hypotenuse equal to the square of the base and the height. So if that was 19th century Walter Thibault attributing the authenticity of this theorem to the Indian rishis, namely Baudhayana, we have as recent as Professor Ian G. Pierce from a university in United Kingdom, who also says that the Sulba Sutras include unarguable evidence of the use of Pythagoras theorem and Pythagoras triplets predating Pythagoras, and evidence of a number of geometrical proofs. So here I would like to also highlight the bias by Wikipedia. If you look at the Wikipedia page of Sulba Sutras, they clearly mention that these statements were just stated, there were no proofs. But the fact is contrary to that, and our today's speaker, Professor M.D. Srinivas, also has got an elaborate lecture on the style of proofs given in Indian mathematical tradition. So with that introduction, I now have the privilege to introduce the speaker to you all. Professor M.D. Srinivas is a well-known authority in the field of Indian mathematics, although his basic training is in quantum mechanics and he has had a couple of books written in that field. He is also equally well known in the field of Indian mathematical tradition. As I said, he is a trained quantum mechanics, holding a PhD in physics from University of Rochester, United States of America, and he has had his academic stint at the Department of Theoretical Physics, University of Madras. He has served in the university in various capacities, and he has also held honorary positions in Center of Policy Studies, where he is now one of the directors there. He is the founding chairman of Center of Policy Studies, and he is the member of the advisory board on History of Science, Indian National Science Academy of different periods. He is a member of the Indian National Commission for History of Science, and he was the vice chairman of the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla, and he's also a member of the Central Sanskrit Board since 2006. He is the chairman of MOP Vaishnava College for Women, and he is the member of Indian National Commission for History of Science and Indian National Science Academy. He has several books to his credit, and the one that comes to my mind immediately are the books that have really been that has really offered deeper insight are this Annam Bahukurvita, which he has co-authored with another scholar, Jitendra Bajaj, and one of his recent books on Karana Paddhati, along with his collaborators, namely Professor M.S. Sriram and Professor Ramasubramaniam and his student Venkateshwar Pai. I'm really grateful to Professor Srinivas to have spontaneously consented to my request to deliver a lecture, although he has a very packed schedule, and I'm glad that he agreed to my request and deliver a lecture today on the title Bhadra Ganita, a study of auspicious squares of numbers in India. Over to you, Professor Srinivas.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Professor Ramanathan, for inviting me to speak on this Bodhayana Day that's being celebrated at IIT BHU. In my presentation, I will make a brief mention on Bodhayana. So let's move on. As Professor Ramanathan pointed out, the Shulba Sutras are generally dated around 800 BCE. They could be quite prior to that also. Bodhayana Shulba Sutra is often thought of as one of the oldest Shulba Sutras. It's a text to discuss the geometry of construction of Vedic altars, Yajna Vedi. But it's also a text of the oldest textbook of geometry, which gives exact methods of construction using a rope, a rajju, and a gnomon or a shanku. And this contains the first general statement of this theorem that normally goes by the name of Pythagoras. But this is stated for the diagonal of a rectangle, Dirgha Chaturashra. So Dirgha Chaturashrasya Akshmiya Rajjuhu Parshvamani Tiryangmani Chaya Prithak Bhute Kurutaha Tadubhayam Karoti. So the diagonal square of a rectangle is equal to the sum of the square of its sides. So this theorem is later known in Indian mathematics books as the Bhuja Koti Karna Nyaya. Next slide, sir. What we can also see is that there is a whole lot of geometry and other things in Bodhayana's Shulba Sutra. It contains exact methods for construction, transformation of square into rectangle, isosceles, trapezium, etc. It has an approximate conversion of a square into a circle involving a value of pi around 3.1. It gives an approximation per square root of 2 and mentions that it's an approximation only, which is of a very interesting form. Square root of 2 is 1 plus 1/3 plus 1 by 3 into 4 minus 1 by 3 into 4 into 34, which is about 5 to 6 decimal places correct. And it's actually the rational number 577 by 404, which is indeed a solution of the second order indeterminate equation x squared minus 2y squared is equal to 1. Anyway, so this is about Bodhayana. We can move on. But next slide will tell you something about the proof of Pythagoras theorem in Indian tradition. Bodhayana gives a method for a geometrical construction which gives a new square which is equal to sum of two given squares. So here ABCD is one square and IFGH is another square. And to add that, the following construction as indicated is given. And if you study this construction, you will immediately see that the Shulba Sutra geometers had a proof of a geometrical proof of Pythagoras theorem also. Now let us move into the topic of the day, that is Bhadra Ganita. This is the study of magic squares in India. Bhadra, as you know, is auspicious. We have the great Rigvedic mantra Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaha, that let's hear auspicious things. Magic has a very different connotation, charlatanism, sorcery, etc. So the word magic square is a European sort of invention in late medieval and early modern period. It was always known as Bhadra Ganita in India. Even in Islam, it was called harmonious sort of collection of numbers. The Islamic mathematicians studied magic squares from about 10th century onwards. Anyway, magic squares really were part of popular mathematics in India. In fact, the first chapter of Srinivas Ramanujan's notebook, the famous notebooks that he wrote, started writing when he was in school, maybe first 8th standard or 7th standard, something like that. The first chapter is on magic squares. Professor T. Vijayaraghavan, a very famous mathematician, Indian mathematician, he wrote an important article on Jaina magic squares. We will come back to it later in this talk. He starts by saying that he learned by heart at the age of 9 the magic square that is shown in this slide. And this was taught to him by an elderly person who had not been to school at all. So this is the sort of indication of the kind of popularity that was enjoyed by magic squares in Indian tradition, that everybody almost knew. It was one of the things everybody enjoyed. Let's go to the next slide. Now, magic squares. What is a magic square? A semi-magic square is a square where all the rows and columns add to the same sum. So in this 3 by 3 square, the rows and columns add up to 15, the first one, the first square above. But the two diagonals, they add up to different numbers, 24 and 12. So that is not called a magic square, that is called a semi-magic square. The square, the 3 by 3 square below is a magic square. There, every row, every column, and the two diagonals, 4, 5, 6 and 8, 5, 2, all of them add to 15. So a magic square is a square array of numbers where the rows, columns, and the two principal diagonals, why I am saying two principal diagonals, we will see in a moment, add to the same sum, called the magic sum. Next slide. In India, we specialize in the study of what are called pan-diagonal magic squares. Can you take up this slide a little bit up, please? Slightly up, 2 centimeters up. Up, take it up. Right. Here is an example of what is called a pan-diagonal magic square. A pan-diagonal magic square where, apart from the rows and columns adding to the magic sum, what are called the broken diagonals also add to the magic sum. So 30, 44, 26 and 36, 22, 14, 28 are the two diagonals of this square. But look at 30, 26, 20, 24. So you start at 30 and start going up to the right, but you go out of the square, so you come back to the bottom, which means you are identifying the top edge of the square with the bottom edge of the square. Similarly, you identify the left edge of the square with the right edge of the square, or in mathematical parlance, you say you embed the square on a torus. So 30 plus 26 plus 20 plus 24 is one broken diagonal. 10 plus 16 plus 40 plus 34 is another broken diagonal. So all these things given here are different broken diagonals. All of them also add to the same number. So this is a very famous ancient square called Nagarjuniya, supposedly constructed by Nagarjuna in the 1st century of the Common Era. It adds up to 100. So a pan-diagonal magic square, which is what normally Indians consider, is a very special kind of a magic square, which apart from all the rows and columns adding up to the magic sum, even the broken diagonals. So there are 8 broken diagonals in a 4x4 magic square, and 6 broken diagonals, 2 principal diagonals. So there are 8 diagonals in all, and 4 rows and 4 columns. So in all, there are 16 sums which add up to 100. As later on we'll see there are many more sums which add up to the magic sum. Next slide, please. Now I will go to a brief outline of the history of the study of magic squares in India. So this I will be speaking on many of these topics during the course of the lecture, but this is first a quick overview. So Bhadra Ganita is the name for the study of magic squares in Indian tradition. As I said, it deals with auspicious collection, arrangement of numbers. They were also called yantras. They were called kachaputas, that means the surface of a tortoise. They were also called Sarvato Bhadra, as we shall see. Now, various texts mention the Vriddha Garga, an ancient astronomer, around 100 BCE or even earlier of having introduced 3x3 magic squares. 3x3 magic squares were supposedly known in China from very ancient times. It's called the Lo Shu magic square, which got revealed to the ancient Chinese emperor sages. The work Kakshaputta of Nagarjuna, the famous Buddhist scholar of 100 CE, this work is not fully available, but extracts and citations from it show that there is a method of constructing 4x4 magic squares. They lead to pentagonal squares when the magic sum is even. Then we come to the chapter on Gandha Yukti. It should be Yukti, pardon me for the error in the slide. Gandha Yukti in the famous text Brihat Samhita of Varahamihira, the astronomer of the 6th century. It gives a 4x4 pentagonal square. So in that sense, by about 6th century, Indians had clearly the 4x4 pentagonal squares. If the Nagarjuna's Kakshaputta is found, it's only citations from it are available, then we knew it even much earlier. In fact, this is the first instance of magic square anywhere in the world, 4x4 magic square. Bhattotpala wrote a very famous commentary on Brihat Samhita. There he discusses all the properties of such 4x4 pentagonal squares. He calls them Sarvato Bhadra Kakshaputta. Medical works of around 8th, 9th century, starting that, they also mention various magic squares as being auspicious to be kept at crucial times near the patients. Pentagonal squares were so common that they were inscribed in inscriptions. And today we can still see such 4x4 pentagonal squares on the walls of 10th and 11th century Jaina temples in central and northern India, at Dudha near Jhansi, and in the Pashwanatha temple in Khajuraho. In fact, there is some square inscribed in the Gwalior fort also in 15th century. Next, please. Next slide, please. There is a Prakrita work, mathematical work, dealing with arithmetic, geometry, and commercial mathematics, called Ganita Sara Kaumudi, composed by Thakura Peru. It's actually written in the language called Apabhramsha. It has a very small section on magic squares, Jantra, where he classifies his magic squares into doubly even, that is a number divisible by 4. Singly even, that is an even number which is not divisible by 4, and odd squares. But the most important Indian mathematical work on magic squares is the Ganita Kaumudi. It's a very celebrated text of Narayana Pandita, written in 1356. We will discuss quite a bit about this text a little bit later. There is a text, mathematics text called Chatura Chintamani, again a brief text on arithmetic, geometry, and commercial mathematics of 16th century, which also has a small section on magic squares. So currently it's only these 3 mathematics works which discuss the mathematics of magic squares. There are many stotras of the Jainas which have these yantras in the form of magic squares given. The Tijapa Huta Stotra of Manadeva Suri, various stotras of Sundar Suri, these are all around 14th and 15th century. The Chatushrishti Yogini Mandala Stuti of Dharmanandana, they have various 8th order, 12th order magic squares displayed in them. Similarly, the great compendium of Indian law by Raghunandana, he lived in Navadvipa in early 16th century. The compendium of Indian law is called, Dharmashastra is called Smriti Tattva. He wrote various tattvas, Raghunandana. That has a section on magic squares, where he gives a method of construction similar to the Kakshaputta of Nagarjuna. Next slide, please. Now I have gone to some detail on the contents of this great work, Ganita Kaumudi. The last chapter of Ganita Kaumudi deals with magic squares, and the chapter is called Bhadra Ganita. It has 55 verses, which gives various Karana Sutras or Prakriya Sutras, which give rules of construction, and some Sankhya Sutras and Paribhasha Sutras, which give definitions and related material concerning magic squares. And there are 17 verses of examples. Ganita Kaumudi is indeed a work which is about 2 to 2.5 times the size of Lilavati, and it contains all that is contained in Lilavati and many things more. It deserves to be much better known all over India. It's one of the last very highly significant works written in perhaps in central India or North India in the 14th century. After classifying the squares into Samagarbha, that is numbers which are multiples of 4, Vishamagarbha, that is numbers which are of the type 4m plus 2, and Vishama, that is odd numbers, Narayana discusses a linear indeterminate equation that is generally called Kutaka in Indian mathematics tradition. He uses this Kutaka for choosing, suppose I give you a sum, a magic sum, say 50, and then I say, can you construct a 6 cross 6 magic square with where every row, column, etc. adds up to 60. Then what are the kind of numbers that have to be chosen? Narayana advocates that we should always choose arithmetic sequences or a collection of arithmetic sequences of numbers to fill a magic square. That is the best way of constructing magic squares. And so he obtains a linear indeterminate equation and solves them and tells you what kinds of arithmetic sequences are possible and for what orders what sums are possible. So it's a very general mathematical formulation of the relation between the arithmetical sequences that fill up a magic square, its order and the total sum. Then Narayana gives a very general treatment of 4 cross 4 pentagonal magic squares filled by numbers 1 to up to 16. And this method he describes is called the method of horse moves in Chaduranga. Turagagati in Chaduranga Ritya, Turagagati. He displays 24 such squares with the number 1 at the top left corner and then concludes that in all there are 384 such pentagonal magic squares. In 1700, around that, Frenical de Bessy in France listed all the 7040 possible magic squares of order 4 filled by numbers 1 to 16. And it was only in 20th century, around 1938, that Rosser and Walker showed that only 384 of them were pentagonal. In fact, the number that was explicitly constructed by Narayana Pandita in 1356. Then the Rosser and Walker also discussed some of the interesting properties of 4 cross 4 pentagonal squares, including the fact that every 2 cross 2 subsquare of them add up to the magic sum, as we shall see a little bit later. Next slide, please. Another thing that we see in recent times was that Professor Vijayaraghavan, whom I mentioned, he came up with a very interesting property of 4 cross 4 pentagonal magic squares, that every element there has a fixed set of neighbors. This makes the construction of them almost trivial and very simple, as we shall see later in the talk. Narayana Pandita in his Ganita Kaumudi gives 2 methods each for constructing each of the 3 classes, that is doubly even, singly even and odd magic squares. One method for doubly even involves using a 4 cross 4 magic square to construct a 8 cross 8 or 12 cross 12 or 16 cross 16 magic square. For odd order magic square, Narayana repeats what was called the traditional Indian method. It was perhaps, it's a very ancient method in India. And this was transmitted to Europe in 1690s by de la Loubre, who was a French ambassador in Thailand. But Narayana's revolutionary discovery, what is called the Samputa Vidi. That's called the method of folding, of generating a large class of both the doubly even and odd magic square by composing 2 simple magic squares of given templates. And this is extraordinary. This is a very general mathematical construction. It was only in 18th century, perhaps after knowing about de la Loubre's work and other things from India, that de la Hire and Leonard Euler considered similar methods in 18th century of composing 2 simple magic squares, but their methods were much more complicated than Narayana's method. And in fact, this using 2 magic squares, adding them or composing them in some manner is a very standard preferred way of mathematical construction of magic squares in most of the contemporary studies. What is interesting is that the templates used by Narayana and the squares that he came up for 8 cross 8 are indeed extraordinary. In fact, in 1990s, people started talking about what is called the most perfect magic square. And lo and behold, the first example of such magic square of order greater than 4 are the 8 cross 8 and other magic squares that Narayana constructed. In fact, this method always leads to such most perfect magic squares. Similarly, his folding method can be used to generate what are called ultra magic squares in the case of odd magic. So I've summarized Narayan as well. Now let us go from the ancient period quickly to see some details. Next slide. So this is the Kakshaputa of Nagarjuna. There is a mnemonic Arka Indu Nidha Nari Kena Lagna Vinasanam. So this has to be decoded in the way using Katapayadi kind of thing. Vowels have value 0. The Kavarga, Tavarga and Pavarga have 1 to 9 and 0. Yaralava have 1 to 7. So Arka Indu Nidha Nari, Arka Indu is 0108, Nidha Nari 0902, Tena Lagna 6030, Vinasana. So this is a template. It has 2 arithmetic sequences, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6, 7, 8, 9 placed at crucial places. What Nagarjuna said was, you take the complete, if you want a magic square of order 2n, you subtract from n the element that is 2 steps away diagonally. That is, if 3 is at a place, then 2 steps away diagonally is 0. There you put n minus 3. If 6 is at a place, 2 steps away from it diagonally, you put n minus 6. By filling it up that way, you get a magic square, and it's actually a pan-diagonal magic square adding up to 2n. I have constructed on the right, using this template, a magic square adding to 100. As you can see, this is different from the Nagarjuniya that I displayed right at the beginning of the lecture. Next slide, please. But if you want an odd number sum, if you want 101 total, later on we will see pan-diagonal squares are not possible with odd numbers unless we allow fractional numbers in for entries in the magic square. So to get to n plus 1, Nagarjuna slightly modified the transformation that needed to be done to that template. And here we have a magic square which adds up to 101. Rows and columns and 2 diagonals add up to 101, but it is not pan-diagonal. That is, the broken diagonals do not add up. And I have displayed below again the Nagarjuniya, which adds up to 100. Next slide. Then we go to Varahamihira. Varahamihira, in the chapter on Gandha Yukti, this was to discuss the preparation of perfumes. There are about half a dozen verses in this chapter which deal with very important combinatorial problems. It tells you the computation of binomial coefficients, then how to order them in the form of a prastara, and then there are these verses on magic square. So with using all these various perfumes, Tvakta, Mansya, Priyangu, Musta, Kesha, using all these perfumes, take so many units of them, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 5, 8, 2, 3, 4, 1, 7, 6, 7, 6, 4, 1, and then you mix either rows or columns, you will get 18 units of good perfumes, and these perfumes have to be called Sarvato Bhadra. Varahamihira referred to this 4x4 square as a Kakshaputa. So the Kakshaputa of Nagarjuna and the Sarvato Bhadra of Varahamihira are indeed the oldest 4x4 magic squares in history. Here every row and column and the diagonals and the broken diagonals adds up to 18. But the numbers are repeated. Next slide. Bhattotpala has written the commentary and he has explained what is meant by Sarvato Bhadra. I will skip this slide. Later on you can take a look at this quotation in the translation. I will directly go to its mathematical meaning. Next slide. So what Bhattotpala is saying, you add any 2x2 subsquare of this square, you get 18. And these 2x2 subsquares can be done even by linking the top row with the bottom column, because as I said, this magic square should be viewed as having been put on a torus, or by identifying the top edge with the bottom edge, left edge with the right edge. So if you go up from the top row, you come to the bottom row. You go left from the left extreme row, you come to the right extreme row, and things like that. So think of it 2 by 2x2 subsquares, including those subsquares, they all add up to 18. And that is why the square is called Sarvatobhadra. Today we will see that in 20th century it was proved that every pentagonal 4x4 matrix magic square has this Sarvatobhadra property. Next slide please. And in fact, if we add these simple 4x4 squares to Varahamihira square, you will get the two magic squares given below. Here the numbers are not repeated. The numbers go from 1 to 16. And these are particular cases of the 384 pentagonal squares that were later on described in toto by Narayana Pandita. So these up to 6th century. Let's go on quickly. So these are the magic squares which are displayed. This is the magic square which is displayed both in the Chotasuran temple at Dudhai and in the Parshvanatha temple at Khajuraho. The photograph below is a photograph of the inscription as it is there currently in the Khajuraho temple. Perhaps it is kept in the museum or it may be in the temple. I have not visited the place. So this is again a 4x4 square. We will be seeing a lot of such squares in future. So we will move on. Next. Now, first I will describe the ancient Indian method for odd squares. The method is you place one, odd square means 3x3, 5x5 and things like that. Let me take the 5x5 square on the left. So you put 1 on the center of the top row. Then you start moving rightwards, diagonally, upwards. But if you go upwards diagonally 1, you go out of the magic square. So you come to the bottom, you will see 2. And from there you go rightwards, upwards, diagonally, you come to 3. From 3 again you go rightwards, diagonally, you go out of the magic square, you have to come to the left, you come to 4. Then you come to 5. But after 5 you cannot do again because you again see 1. So at that stage you come down 1 step, go to 6. Then again 6, 7, 8, then 9, 10. 10 again you get cross 6 once again. So you come down to 11, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So this way you complete the magic square. It's a magic square where every row, column and the two diagonals add up to 65. It is not pan-diagonal. The magic squares constructed by this method are not pan-diagonal. Another thing, I mean this I have illustrated with the 3x3 also, 5x5. Here I have put the 1 on the middle of the right column. Now you have to go outwards, either up or down. And again, you go along the small diagonals. So this method is called the method of moving along the Alpashrutis, the broken or the small diagonals. And this invariably leads to beautiful magic square. Next slide, please. So here I have constructed a 7x7 magic square. And all these magic squares also have an extra property that they are symmetrical about the central element. Any two elements which are symmetrically placed with respect to the central element add up to twice the central element. 26 plus 24 is 50, 27 plus 23 is 50, 37 plus 13 is 50 also, 45 plus 5 is 50 also. So, and it is this method which De La Loubre in his book Du Royaume des Saiyans transmitted to France in the late 17th century. Next one please. Now we go to Narayana Pandita's Bhadraganita. So at the beginning, Narayana Pandita says this Bhadraganita was taught from Shiva to the Yaksha Manibhadra. Then he says, and this is a mathematics which is related to arithmetic sequences. Shredi Sambandhi Sadganita. Interesting mathematics related to Shredi, arithmetical series. Sadganaka Chamatkritaye, to astonish good mathematicians. Yantra Vidam Pritaye, for the happiness of those who are keen to have magic squares. Kuganakana Garbakshiptye, mathematicians who are unnecessarily arrogant, to put down their arrogance. I now tell you the mathematics of magic squares or Bhadraganita, the Bhadra squares. So first he starts with this classification Samagarbha if order is doubly even, Vishamagarbha if it is singly even, and Vishama if it is odd. Next slide please. So then Narayana says how the arithmetic sequences are related to the total sum and the order of the magic square. So you want to have an n cross n magic square adding up to some s, and you want to construct it out of an arithmetic sequence where the initial number is a and the common difference is d. Since there are n squared elements, you get the equation ns is equal to n squared by 2 into a plus A plus n squared minus 1 into D, or S is equal to NA plus n by 2 into n squared minus 1 into D. Here, suppose I have told you the sum, that is S, and I have told you the order of the magic square, that is N. You have to find out what are all the possible arithmetic sequences with initial number A and the common difference D. And A and D, to start with, we can assume they are integers. Then this is a problem. It's called a linear indeterminate equation, or a Kutaga problem in Indian mathematics. It has a solution if and only if S is divisible by the GCD of N, that is the greatest common divisor of N and N by 2 into n squared minus 1. Just to tell you the kind of mathematics Narayana Pandita is doing with magic square. So the conclusion then is that if N is odd, the magic sum should be divisible by N. If N is even, magic sum should be divisible by N by 2. So for instance, magic squares of 34 are possible, 4 cross 4 magic squares, though 34 is not divisible by 4. It is divisible by 4 by 2. Whereas magic square of 30 is not possible with a 7 cross 7 magic square. Only 28 or 49 or things like that are possible. Then Narayana even discusses when you don't have one arithmetic sequence, even n arithmetic sequence, what happens, even that he discusses. Next slide, please. We will not go into that. So here is an example. He constructs the sequence by this indeterminate equation, 40 is equal to 4a plus 30d. If the sum is given 40, 4 cross 4 magic square you want to do. He writes down 3 solutions and then writes down a magic square for each of them. In one case, the common difference is 0, so this is a trivial magic square, and the others are non-trivial magic squares. Incidentally, I should tell you, there are no 2 by 2 magic squares which are non-trivial, and there are no pan-diagonal magic squares which are of the order 3. But greater than 3, there are non-trivial and pan-diagonal magic squares are all ordered. Next slide. Next, Narayana's horse movement method. We will consider this very briefly. He has a long verse and then says how to fill up a 4 cross 4 square by an arithmetic sequence using horse movement. And he has various other kinds of words called Koshtaitya, Koshtantara movement, and Krama and Utkrama. We will not discuss this. We will go on further. Next slide. Next slide, please. So, what Narayana does is, to explain the method that he has given in the verse, he constructs 24 magic squares with the numbers 1 to 16, with 1 put on the top left corner. So, he constructs half of it so that you know how his rules go by. And we can see that what are the horse movements are involved. For instance, the movement from 1 to 2 is a horse movement which we can call as a movement which takes you 1 row below. The movement from 7 to 8 is a horse movement where it takes you to 1 row above. So D and U refer to that kind of horse movement. The movement from 1 to 3, that is, it takes you to 1 row, 1 column to the left. So that is called a left movement. The movement, for instance, from 5 to 7 is also a left movement. Where so like that you can have various movements. There are only 4 horse movements in a 4 cross 4 magic square. Go to the next slide, please. And in fact, one can give a complete algorithm to analyze the sequence of horse movements. Exact rules can be given, and I have written down, for instance, for 6 of the 24 magic squares of Narayana Pandita. Next one, please. This is work that we have been doing with Professor Ram Subramaniam and his student Surya Narayan. Next one, please. So this is possible to exactly characterize what Narayana Pandita has given in his verse in terms of horse movements alone. There are various other issues with that which we can discuss in a suitable publication later. Now, this issue was taken up only in 20th century again, as I said, by Rosser and Walker. They proved many properties of a general 4 cross 4 pan-diagonal magic square, not necessarily filled with 1 to 16. Narayana's argument for 384 pan-diagonal squares, he constructed 24 of those squares. It then said this one can be put in any place out of these 16 squares, and the same rules will generate new magic squares there. So 24 into 16 gave him 384 pan-diagonal magic squares with entries 1 to 16. Rosser and Walker showed that every subsquare of a pentagonal square adds to the magic sum. This is a property which Bhattacharya had already discovered in 10th century. Next slide, please. The next very interesting thing, Rosser, I think this was also perhaps known to Indians because the half-filled magic squares and the Kakshaputa of Nagarjuna is essentially based upon the second property. That in every 4x4 pentagonal magic square, any two elements which are separated by two cells along a diagonal add up to half the magic sum. So 1 plus 16, 6 plus 11, 15 plus 2, 4 plus 13, you can see in this square, 14 plus 3, they all add up to 17. And in fact, this property is equivalent to pentagonality. Even property 1 is equivalent to pentagonality. And Rosser and Walker also showed that out of 7,084 cross 4 magic squares, only 384 are pentagonal. Next slide, please. Professor Vijayaraghavan came up few years after Rosser's paper with an even more beautiful theorem. He said that in a 4x4 magic square with entries 1 to 16, each element has the same set of neighbors in each of the 384 versions. That is, the neighbor of an element is, for instance, here 16 is sitting. These 2, 3, 5, 9 are its neighbors. Neighbors are either along the rows or along the columns. So what Vijayaraghavan said was, in every magic square involving 1 to 16, a 4x4 magic square, 2, 3, 5 and 9 occur surrounding the number 16. And similarly for each number, there are 4 neighbors which are fixed for all the 384. So it becomes extremely easy now to construct 4x4 pentagonal magic square as I have shown below in these 3 steps. So first you place 1 anywhere that you want. I put it at top left corner. If 1 is there, 16 has to come 2 cells away along a diagonal because 16 plus 1 is 17. So 16 will come here. Then 2, 3, 5, 9 should be placed around 16 in any order that you want because they are the neighbors of 16 in every 4x4 magic square, pentagonal magic square with 1 to 16 as its elements. Now after that you can use the property 1 and 2. Now with 5 here, immediately you will see, I am sorry, I have moved away from this square to another square. There has been an error here. But you just take this as the starting construction. You have put 2 here, 3 here, 5 here, 9 there, and you have put 1 there. Okay. 5 plus 12 is 17. 12 will come here. 8 plus 9 is 17. So 8 will come here. 15 plus 2 is 17. So 15 will come here. 14 plus 3 is 17. 14 will come here. Now you can fill the rest by knowing that 1, 8, 12 already is filled. So 13 should come here. You can take this 2 by 2 subsquare. 1, 8, 14. So 11 should come here. So like that you can fill up. So this is something that any school student of class 7, 8, 9 can be easily taught how to construct a 4x4 magic square with elements 1 to 16, starting wherever that you want, putting 1, then the entire magic square can be immediately written down. In fact, 16 magic squares can be written down because 2, 3, 5, 9 can be permuted in 24 ways. So 24 magic squares can be written down with 1 here and 1 in the other places will give you the other 16. Okay, next slide please. Now I will not go to higher order magic squares except to go to Narayana's folding method. So let us skip several slides. Let us move on. Keep moving on. So Narayana has this folding method which he describes in about 5 verses. Let us go to the next slide. So this folding method, this is the translation of the verse. Let us move to the next slide. We will consider an example. And let us consider the example below. Come down, sir. I mean, take it up further. Take it up. Go to the next slide. Let us consider the next example. Go further. Yes. Narayana's example for an 8 cross 8 square adding to 260. So he says you want to do an 8 cross 8 square. You choose one starting sequence 1 to 8. Then you choose another sequence 0 to 7. Now that you want to add it up to 260. So 260 minus sum of the starting sequence divided by this other sequence. You choose your both the sequences such that this number is an integer. In the example that we have chosen, it is an integer 8. Then this integer you multiply this other sequence parapankti. Then you get what is called the gunapankti, which is 8, 16, etc. Go to the next slide, please. So you have these two sequences 1 to 8 and 0, 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56. So you fill up one magic square which is called the kavaran, chadya, and another magic square which is called the kavaran. The chadya you fill up by 1 to 8 along the columns like this in the top half, and in the opposite anti-clockwise in the bottom half. The kavaran, the chadaka, you fill them up not by splitting the magic square along the columns. The left hand side columns you pick the sequence 0, 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56 in an anti-clockwise. In the right hand side half of the square you put the 0, 8, 16, 24 in the clockwise manner. Then you fold them as if you make namaste like Anjalim Badwa, or you fold them like you close two doors. So then you add them. Go to the next slide. If you add them like that, you get this magic square. You can see that this is an 8 cross 8 square. It adds up to 230. Further, it is pan-diagonal. That is, not only its two major diagonals, top down both ways, and horizontal, the broken diagonals, all of them add up to 230. It has even further properties. Every 2 cross 2 subsquare of it adds up to 130. That is half of the magic sum. And any pair of elements which are 4 steps away along a diagonal add up to 65. That is 1/4 of the magic sum. In 1990s, these kinds of magic squares were said to be most perfect. But the first example of such most perfect magic square, which is of order larger than 4, is this magic square constructed by Narayana. And in fact, every 8th order, every 12th order, every 24th order, whatever you want, constructed by the kind of template Narayana used, always leads you to a most perfect magic square. Let us skip a few slides. Here it is. What is a most perfect magic square? A most perfect magic square is a magic square of order 4n cross 4n. It should satisfy 3 properties. It is pan-diagonal. Every 2 cross 2 subsquare adds up to 1/n of the magic sum. Every 2 elements which are n by 2 cells apart along a diagonal add to 1/2n of the magic sum. So clearly, every 4 cross 4 pan-diagonal square is most perfect. So those were the oldest examples. Nagarjuna's Kapshaputa, Varahamihira, or the Jaina magic squares were the oldest pan-diagonal and most perfect magic squares. Then Narayana's 8 cross 8 magic square, and the method he has given, the folding method, the wonderful way of composing 2 squares to get a desired magic square of desired sum, of desired order. And that leads to a most perfect magic square in the case of Samagarbha or 4n cross 4n. Now let us go towards the end of the slides. There is a folding method for odd squares, which I skip. I will be sending these slides to the organizers, and they can circulate it amongst the participants and the listeners after the lecture is over. Whosoever wants could contact them and get the slides. We can move on, sir. The folding method for odd squares I will not discuss. Let us go towards the end. Keep moving on. So this subject of magic squares, the Bhadra Ganita, has keep moving on, sir. Keep moving on. Several really lessons for us. Before that, just next slide, please. Here I have the example from Ramanujan's notebook. He first has this is one of his earliest magic squares, a 3 cross 3. This is an example of folding for odd squares. Next slide, please. In Ramanujan's notebook, there is a 4-cross pair, which is an example of Narayana's folding method for doubly even squares. In fact, many discoveries of Ramanujan are in the great spirit of traditional Indian mathematics. He discovered many continued fractions, many infinite series, many transformation of infinite series, like the Kerala mathematicians did. And of course, he wrote down about 4,000 results in his notebooks, except about 10 or 15 results. All of the rest have been proved to be, or most of them have been proved to be correct, and some of them are still conjectures. Next one, please. Now, the moral of this story is that though if you open a popular book on magic squares, you will find very little of all that I have told you over the last 45 minutes. Why is that so? Because even scholarly books do not discuss the contributions of Indian mathematicians. And why it is so? Because we do not teach courses on the scholarly contributions of Indian mathematicians in our own institutions of higher learning. And we do not do any research on them. Research need not be on alone only on contemporary problems. Older books always throw up many interesting problems of contemporary interest also. Like Professor Vijay Raghavan, if he had known about Narayana's work, he could have done much more. He could have talked about perfect magic squares and various other things. In fact, neither Rosser and Walker nor Vijay Raghavan were aware of Narayana's work, though Narayana's Ganita Kaumudi was published in Sanskrit in 1934-35. So even if a Sanskrit work is edited and published, it doesn't mean that it contributes to the knowledge, unless its contents are analyzed by scholars, maybe in Sanskrit, maybe in Hindi, maybe in English, maybe translated, but it is discussed. The technical contents are discussed. And here I am telling you that there are more than 9,000 source texts of Indian mathematics and astronomy. And in the last 200 years, modern scholars have looked at only about 450 of them, edited them. And even of these 450, only about 80-90 are translated. Much of it has been done in the last 80 years. But much of this work, even in the last 80 years, has been done outside of the portals of our academia. They have been done by individual scholars at their own initiative, spending a lot of time and dedicated effort. And nobody hardly listens to their work also. So there is an urgent need to reorient our national priorities. And due importance should be given to preservation, listing, cataloging, editing of manuscripts, and equally so of promoting systematic studies of this large corpus of source works of the great tradition of science and technology. I have only talked about mathematics, astronomy. Its situation is similar in all other subjects, including humanities and philosophies and literature. Even more so, training young scholars for undertaking all these tasks should be a priority of all our institutions of higher learning, and teaching courses on them, doing research on them should be a priority. Let's go to the next slide. We have seen some popular books on magic squares written by famous Indian mathematicians. There used to be one Professor P.K. Srinivasan, who set up a wonderful museum on Ramanujan, who published a book on Ramanujan Notebook, which is called 2 volumes. Very interesting book. And he was a great enthusiastic, he was a mathematics teacher. He used to attend all international conferences of mathematics education and has been awarded several prizes and all that. A wonderful personality. He has written a popular book which was published by UGC and National Book Trust on magic squares. But most unfortunately, there is no mention of any magic square discussed in any Indian book or in Indian history. This is a book published in 1992, by which time there were already sufficient published literature on magic squares in India. So this shows that even our science popularization hardly popularizes science that has been done in our culture, science that has been done in India. And we hardly teach them in our schools also. We do know today, if we study histories of mathematics in India, we can see that much of what we teach in our schools, in algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and arithmetic, a lot of it has been discovered and developed in India. But we teach it as if these subjects have no relation to India whatsoever. Many of our students in school and even learned professors in educational institutions may know the name of Aryabhatta, Brahmagupta, Bhaskaracharya. Recently, some of them even know about Madhava, the founder of calculus from Kerala. But none of them would be able to tell 2-3 meaningful sentences about the contributions of these great scholars. Let's go to the next slide, please. So unless we start reorienting our curriculum, that it contains mathematical information related to our culture also, not merely the name of Pythagoras, but some details of what is discussed about Pythagorean theorem in Bodhana Shulba Sutra. Many wonderful examples are given in books like Ganita Kaumudi or Leelavati. And all these beautiful things about magic square, there is no mention of it. Our children independently study magic squares from Wikipedia and pick up one bit of information. But Vijayaraghavan's wonderful method of constructing 4x4 magic square is not known to any of our school children. And even things like indeterminate equations can be taught at school level. Brahmagupta's cyclic quadrilateral properties can be taught. So unless we start taking this, our tradition seriously, in the same way as we take modern mathematics coming from the West or from China or Japan seriously, we will not be able to contribute as a nation to the progress of the culture of mathematics in India. We will not be able to contribute in the same way the genius of Indian mathematics eludes us as long as we don't study the genius of Indian mathematics as is contained in the extraordinary contributions of our mathematicians till 2 centuries ago, and perhaps even mathematicians like Ramanujan, who was a completely native-born genius. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about magic squares. Here is a set of references in the end. Some of them are original publications, some of them are later articles. I invite all of you to take a look at them. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you very much, Professor Srinivas, for that wonderful exposition on not just the magic squares, but also our lacunae in the education system altogether. Is it okay if we take one or two questions,
yes.
sir?
Please go ahead.
Okay. There is one gentleman, Mr. Girish Balasubramaniam, and he is interested to know what are the contemporary applications of magic squares.
I am really not a mathematician. I think they are used, I mean, there's something called the Latin squares. And this folding method, one of the ways is it's a combination of orthogonal Latin squares. There are a lot of applications in mathematics itself. Magic square theory is a branch of combinatorial mathematics and number theory, and it has a lot of applications in mathematics itself. I'm sure people who are talking about most perfect magic squares, ultra magic squares, have lots of applications in view in study of patterns. Wherever combinatorial and finite mathematics has application, magic square would have. So I don't want to throw in names like coding and things like that. More experts will be able to perhaps enlighten you on that.
Thank you very much for that. The other question that some anonymous
we know very little about the mathematics of magic square. We know the number of pan-diagonal magic squares of order 4 was discovered by and determined by Narayana Pandita at 384. The number of pan-diagonal magic squares of order 5 is around 5,600. But we don't know the number of pan-diagonal magic squares of order 7. It is a very large number perhaps. Actual number of magic squares of order 5 is around few millions. And magic squares of order 7 will be in 10 to the power 10 or something like that. And pan-diagonal magic squares will be of the order of few lakhs. So there are the mathematics of magic squares involves a whole lot of studies that are to be made. And it's one of those branches which is extremely fascinating, but also fairly complicated in its mathematical sophistication. And you can go ahead with the next question. I think you have muted yourself, Ramanathan.
Yeah, there's a glitch happening in my end. Okay. This other anonymous question is that what, according to you, is the reason for this decline of mathematical productivity, and why is it that it is not incorporated in our curriculum? Is it due to some inferiority complex, or what could be?
No, if it's inferiority complex, then why inferiority complex? So all these are related. I think Indian science, like most of Chinese science, was fairly flourishing till 17th, 18th century. In fact, there's an education survey in Madras in early 19th century, where in Kerala, there were about 900 students studying mathematics and astronomy at a high level in colleges. And most of them came from all communities. And in fact, only about 100 of them came from what is called the Dvijas, or the first three Varnas. But all this education was supported at the local level by the society and the older political order. This was completely stopped by the British rule, who had, for various reasons, very little respect for India. And the ultimate minute of Macaulay says that the entire corpus of Indian texts is not but a small shelf of European books. And Indian astronomy would put the girls in a European school into laughter. But there were people like Rajaram Mohan Rai who said that we should stop all these Sanskrit colleges and Bengali schools and all that thing. We should have English education. So there is a whole lot of confusion in early 19th century. But this changed towards the end of 19th century with the independence movement. So people like Sudhakar Dwivedi started editing. The Ganita Kaumudi has been edited by son of Sudhakar Dwivedi, Padmakar Dwivedi, in early 20th, in the 1930s. And this continued with various scholars. In the pre-independence day, they were even stationed in many of the. Vijayaraghavan was a very important professor. He was earlier in Aligarh. Later on, I think he became the director of the Ramanujan Institute in Madras. But in post-independence India, much of this work has been located outside of the academia. But a whole lot of work is going on. In last 10-20 years, it has also entered the academia in various manner. It is appreciated, but there's lots of confusion surrounds this discipline, because unless you have a community of scholars doing systematic work, all those confusions cannot go. So we have to first go and start teaching it. And we have taught one such course called Indian Mathematics from Ancient Period, Vedic Times to Modern Period, which is suitable for first year college or first year BTech in IITs, etc. It was taught in IIT Bombay and IIT Chennai in an NPTEL course with Professor Ram Subramanian Sriram. So such courses should be there on all subjects. Then I think we will quickly come out of our inferiority complex. We don't need to claim anything. We have to sort of analyze and list and document and understand what was done and what was the spirit of Indian science, what was the genius of Indian science, what was the flavor of Indian science has to be caught. Then we will be doing a lot more of that similar science in future. Next question.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are right.
There is some glitch happening from my end.
Okay.
I was about to suggest your NPTEL course towards the end, and thanks that you have suggested it.
Yes.
I think that is a singular course existing in the country. And now, of course, IIT Indore, again, your colleague, Professor Ram Subramaniam, starting a course on Bhaskaracharya's Leelavati, a very detailed course. So we are picking up the steam, and NEP also is addressing this issue of reviving our ancient knowledge, and I hope with guidance from people like you, we will be able to do some meaningful thing. One last question I will take from Arvind Iyer, who says that from Japanese culture, who also had some kind of this affiliation towards numbers and magic squares,
yes,
they converted successfully into games and puzzles like Sudoku.
Yes.
Now, are there any conscious attempt in our side to revive and make some interesting puzzles from these magic squares?
As you all know, India was the founder of the game of chess. Chaduranga went from here in 5th century to Persia, and then it was adopted in the Islamic civilization later, and it traveled to West from there. And Narayana is talking about Chaduranga Ritya and the horse movement and all that. So there are many older works of recreational and puzzle kind which have not been analyzed, and there are such manuscripts. One professor Vasanta in Mysore had a project with INSA, I remember, more than 2 decades ago, to study one such work in Mysore. But as I told you, the modern mathematicians in India always look up to the contemporary Western literature only, even for historical purposes. And that limits the sort of scope of what is available to them. And since that also sort of limits the kind of flavor and the motivation that one could get out of it. There is a whole lot of possibilities if one pursues this subject. In fact, many simple things can be done. As I said, further study of what are the kind of arithmetic sequences that will have magic squares and all that. There are many more mathematical interesting problems which Narayana Pandita's book throws up. And there would be several such things people can do. And in recreational mathematics also, there are a lot of applications one can see.
Thank you, sir. The form,
sorry,
the decorum.
Most of the questions I didn't have any specific answers. I had to only tell you the known available historical information. The future trends depends upon our determination to pursue these studies in all of our higher institutions of learning in a systematic and rigorous manner. Thank you very much.
Definitely, sir. And as Winston Churchill has said, a nation that forgets its past has no future. So in that sense, if we are such treasures, as you have rightly espoused, that it's only 5% that we have been able to recover, and even in that 5%, critically edited versions are very, very less, which means there is more work to be done. There is much more, and with the technology that we have today, we can go leaps and heads and shoulders. We can leap by heads and shoulders above, and as you have rightly also alluded, that perhaps Ramanujan is one of the last few strains, of the homegrown mathematician, and it's just a coincidence that next week we'll be having his birthday also, 22nd December. So just for the benefit of listeners, it's in the continued tradition of the Indian mathematician. If Patani Samanta was one such, excluding point, after Patani Samanta, it becomes Ramanujan. So the points become less and less if you start it from the 11th century or 12th century onwards. So with this, I bring this talk to a close. I express my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of my institute.
Thank you.
And on my personal behalf to Professor M.D. Srinivas, and request his continued indulgence with our institute to guide us and deliver us next whenever possible lecture he can.
Thank you.
With that, I also thank all the listeners and my team who have given me the support for the logistics to have the lectures run smoothly today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ramnath.
Shashwat, you can stop recording now.